Here's what I'm thinking after Sunday's loss to the Jaguars. Did this game bring more questions than answers? Because honestly, I'm still not over it. I'm still disgusted by what I saw out there. The Chargers lost by 29 points. Do you know when the last time the Chargers lost a game with such a big margin? December 2023 versus the Raiders, 63-21. After 2 seasons, we're on the same spot, and it hurts. Look, I know people tell me to calm down, that it's not worth getting this upset over a game, but you know what? It's 100% worth it in sports to invest everything you have. When your team wins, you celebrate. When they lose, especially like this, it's frustrating as hell. Why would you even get on the airplane, get dressed, prepare to coach if you don't plan on winning that game? That's why losses hurt more than wins. You expect to win, especially after how we looked against the Steelers. We thought this team was headed in the right direction. And then we go out and put up that performance against Jacksonville? It's unacceptable. Now, we're in bye week, and the question is it better to have a bye week right now after a loss like this, or would it be better to have a win going into it? I think it's always better to have a win, but when your quarterback gets lit up for the 100th time this year, when your starting running back is expected to come back after the bye, and you have this big of a letdown, where it's not even close, we got 30-balled. The fire alarm should be sounding. Sirens should be going off. This bye week needs to be a week of film study, a week of figuring out how to turn this thing around and get ready to finish the year strong, competing for the playoffs. The team that played on Sunday was a Brandon Staley-type team. That defense looked like a Brandon Staley defense, just getting ran up and down the field. We got dominated up front to the point where the time of possession was 22:05 compared to 37:55. The Jaguars had one goal, keep Herbert off the field and pressure the snot out of him. And they accomplished both. They looked at Jim Harbaugh and said, we're going to do your game, and we're going to punch you right in the throat with it. And they did, successfully. I thought this was the worst game of Harbaugh's tenure by far. I know some people said that about the Giants game, but this one was worse. These guys should be absolutely embarrassed. And the press conferences after kind of pissed me off. Herbert put the blame on himself, not really blaming other teammates, not throwing guys under the bus. But are we at a point where that needs to happen? Would you want Herbert to be as vocal as A.J. Brown has been? Are we at that point where that's not a bad idea with how they've been playing and what's at stake this year? Look, there's a better chance of hell freezing over than Justin Herbert acting anything like A.J. Brown. It's never going to happen. You're never going to see Justin Herbert freak out publicly. He shouldered the blame in the press conference, and he didn't have a good game. I think Justin Herbert has had a problem this season with holding onto the ball too long. Also, the offensive line is atrocious. You pair those two things together, you get a ton of sacks, and that's exactly what happened. But he also didn't look good throwing the ball, so I understand why he took that stance. Here's my thing, though. I'm not a fan of comparing anyone to A.J. Brown. I love team sports, and football is the ultimate team sport. It takes one guy to mess up out of 11 to make a play fall apart. One guy doesn't do his job, and suddenly it can equal 7 points or a sack. I don't put a wide receiver and a quarterback in the same category. We've seen Justin over and over again for years now where he doesn't freak out. One time I'd like to see him smack his fist on the podium. One time I'd like to see him flip out. The personality of a football team comes from the head coach and the quarterback. When you watch successful teams, you see that personality reflected. The Patriots with Belichick had that calm, do-your-job mentality. The Rams don't get called for stupid penalties. They're aggressive, they're young, there's enthusiasm. I see Jim show emotion after a win. But after a loss, I think it deserves the same thing. All he said after this game was we weren't good in all 3 phases. That's always the go-to line for coaches, but that doesn't mean anything to me. I want to know why you weren't good. I want to see you flip out. You don't need to point fingers by naming names, but say something like, our offensive line stinks. Let us know you're pointing fingers without directly calling out individual guys. It's extremely frustrating. I'm seeing people say Harbaugh's washed, we made the wrong choice, we should have hired Mike Vrabel. I still want to believe in Jim Harbaugh. I still believe in him because I've seen his resume, and his resume shows he's a winner. But the Jim Harbaugh I'm watching this year isn't the same guy I've seen in the past. Where's your energy? Get upset. Show some fire. Remember, at Michigan, this was a process. They didn't come in kicking Ohio State's ass right away. There were bumps in the road before he got to a title. That's what we're experiencing now. The comparison to Mike Vrabel and what he's done in year 1 with New England is slightly unfair because we knew going into the season that the Pats' schedule was a cakewalk. It was easy. We knew it from the start. The difference between Vrabel and Harbaugh's teams right now is when the Pats lose, they're competitive in their losses. The Chargers have had multiple losses this year where they're not even competitive. That falls squarely on the head coach. I'm frustrated with Jim Harbaugh, but I'm more frustrated with Joe Hortiz. When you trade for Austin Deculus, who's one of the worst linemen in the NFL, and replace him with Trevor Penning, who had the worst PFF grade of any Charger in that game, that's what you get. My frustration is growing rapidly with Hortiz because he keeps making decisions on the offensive line that don't make sense. Harbaugh gave the players 5 days off, and they come back Saturday because he wants them to clear their minds. To win in the NFL, to win in the playoffs, you need to win in the trenches. The Chargers are getting bullied in the trenches, and you can't win even a playoff game if you're not going to win there. Looking at the record right now, they have a winning record and should be a playoff team, but it feels like we do it with smoke and mirrors. Sometimes it seems like we're exposed or we aren't playing up to what we're capable of. When you lose to teams that have losing records or struggle against teams with losing records, that's a problem. I don't care about the regular season as much because we've proven we can make the playoffs. I want to see us win in the playoffs. You've got to take a step forward every season, moving up that mountain to get to the top and hold that trophy. You've got to win a playoff game. Right now, this team doesn't look like a dominating playoff-winning team, and I don't know if there is a team in the AFC where I feel that way. I've given up on the Buffalo Bills at times. The Chiefs are 5-5, and the Broncos barely win their games every single week, but the key is they win. I don't know how good the Broncos are, but when I see this team go play these 10 o'clock games across the country, they're terrible. It doesn't make any sense. If you look at how the playoff schedule is going to work, that first game is probably going to be a 10 a.m. game across the country against a team like the Bills. Are you ready to play? This has been happening for years, way before Jim. The Chargers do this all the time. I can't figure it out. It sounds ridiculous that the time makes a difference, but more than any other franchise, the Chargers struggle with this. The Rams don't struggle like this, the 49ers don't, the Seahawks don't. Looking at the stats when they're in a different time zone, they've allowed over 25 points a game, 144.5 rushing yards, and the passing game has taken a massive step back. There are massive leaps in performance, and we see it with our eyes. This team is sleepwalking. We haven't even played anyone that good in these spots. The Giants were 2-9 with a rookie quarterback in his first game. The Jaguars were 2-6 coming off an embarrassing loss. The Titans were 1-9. The Dolphins had a GM that got fired. That's the competition. What happens if they make the playoffs and have to go on the road to face Houston or Buffalo? They're going to get smoked. Absolutely smoked. Looking at the remaining schedule, Raiders, Eagles, Chiefs, Cowboys, Texans, Broncos, how confident should we feel? The Raiders game should be a win coming off a bye week, but I don't know with this team. The Eagles are a massive challenge. Kansas City is in desperation mode, and I'll take Patrick Mahomes in desperation mode 10 times out of 10. Dallas I feel decent about because their defense is terrible. The Texans game worries me. Remember what happened last year? And then finishing at Denver, they'll probably need that game to clinch. Honestly, I maybe see 2 wins to finish out the year. The offensive line is the biggest problem. There's no reason Jamar Salyer isn't in at left tackle. He can do it. We know he can. You have Mekhi Becton, who graded out as the 3rd worst player on the team at right guard. And he gets hurt in the second quarter. And can we talk about Bradley Bozeman's flop? That was embarrassing. You're an offensive lineman. You're supposed to be the tough guys. They're the guys who don't wear sleeves when it's minus 30. But you're in Jacksonville, in Florida, on a Sunday afternoon, and you're flopping? Come on, it's embarrassing. If the Chargers lose to the Raiders, this season is over. Make that very clear. You cannot lose to that team. And if they don't make the playoffs because they can't win these road games, then what was the point of hiring Jim Harbaugh? We thought he was the real NFL coach that would fix this. The team needs to show up, the coaches need to hold players accountable, and we need to see some fire. Otherwise, this season's going to end in disappointment again, and I don't know how much more of that we can take.